What's up, CMN friends and family? Jeffrey Portmann back with you on the CMN Leadership Podcast. Thanks for jumping on. And I'm fired up, as I say every time, to have Pastors Josiah and Micah Kennealy with us. They are the founding directors of Young Adults Today and Chi Alpha History, local church, authors. They are fantastic. So thank you guys so much for joining us. How you doing?
Are you kidding me? We get to spend time with you, Jeffrey. It's a great day. We're fired up as well.
Well, you and my mom and my wife feel that way. Everyone else, we're not sure. So that's good.
That's a good start, right?
That's right.
Thanks for having us.
So first of all, let me ask this. How has your life changed? We're going to hit a bunch of topics. But when you think back to when you were a young adult, by the way, what age parameters would you define young adult as?
We've always identified it as 18 to 30. Okay. So that 12-year span.
I love it. I only ask that because I sometimes we're in settings where, and it's typically ethnic settings where the young adult, I spoke at a young adult conference and there was like 50-year-olds there. I'm like, woo, I want to be a part of that, right? So 18 to 30. So when you think about your young adult years and you're still in them, obviously you can see them from where you're at, but what was a moment that you saw as impactful in that young adult season?
One of the first?
Yeah, I think for me, I went to business school for 2 years, and then I ended up at North Central University, sensed the call of God on my life. Yeah. And felt a call, a pull, a drawing into ministry. And side note, I love CMN and the Church Multiplication Network. You guys would come every year. And I know Micah was a student as well. And separately, because we were at different times at North Central, but we would go to the pizza parties. Okay. And love CMN because Clarence St. John told us the fastest way to reach lost people was through church planting.
Come on.
And so to every church planter listening, we just love the work that you're doing. And we feel entrepreneurial in the sense that God has us starting some new things, whether it was a young adult ministry in a local church, a campus ministry, or now this young adults today. And I think for me, it all goes back to, Jeffrey, a dorm dream that God gave me the summer of my going into my senior year of college. And I got a black and white vision with my Bible open, reading Ecclesiastes. And that was a moment that marked my life because I saw visually tens of thousands of young adults on their knees, lifting their hands to heaven, surrendering their life to Christ. And the data, the research is telling us otherwise then when I was in college. And now to this day, things... the faith of the next generation is worth everything. Come on. But the data is really suggesting that young adults are leaving the church in droves and really having some questions with faith. And so that is our white hot why, is that vision of seeing young adults reconcile for Christ. And that's been one moment that I go back to. I don't know if you have a similar one or different one.
I think there's just several moments of recognizing, like when you're 18, you're going off to college, the military, or you're hitting your first career, whatever that is, or getting into the workforce. And for me, it was leaving my parents' home was a pivotal moment of recognizing, holy cow, my faith needs to become my own. And what does that look like for me? Not for them telling me, but what does that look like for me? That was like chapter 1. And I think that 4 years really can make or break the next, 10 years of your life and beyond, whether you're going to get into the church scene or the club scene or the organizations on your college campus, whatever that is. And I think the second pivotal moment for me was getting into the workforce, being 22, having that 4-year degree, recognizing and realizing, wow, I'm qualified, quote unquote, now to do what I'm passionate about doing. And that was that business communication at that time. And it wasn't until literally I went to a Chi Alpha retreat down in South Dakota, Sioux Falls, and I walked into one of the breakout sessions because by that time I was interning at a church. I was on fire for God, rededicated my life to Him, and really felt like the presence of the Lord, like baptized in the Holy Spirit, called to ministry, called to young adults specifically outside of Josiah in my singleness. So I think to know who you are and whose you are, even before you say I do, if that's what God has for you, is essential and was essential for me. So just recognizing, where did I fall short or choose to fall short when it came to my personal relationship with God, and how can God use my testimony to influence, impact, and hopefully encourage those who are in a season that I once was. So I think that really sparked a passion in me when God called me up, called me out of sin and into a renewed relationship with Him, more or less. And what that's looked like is so many different layers since then, but it's been an awesome journey. So
good. I want to allude to two things. One that each of you said. Josiah, you mentioned that stats say that young adults are leaving the church in droves. And I had a conversation with someone recently that, and I don't disagree with that, but I think there is maybe even another track to it. And that is that they might be leaving our church, but they're investigating faith in different ways.
Right.
And I think it ties into something, Micah, that you said. For you, a pivotal moment was when you left home. It's interesting, 42% of young adults live at home right now with their parents, right? Which again, and for those folks who are have different ethnicities, that's very common for there to be family, generations together. That's my wife's culture, Samoan, very generational living. But this is the most students, young adults that have been at home since the Great Depression, right? So I think you guys have talked passionately about intergenerational ministry. So talk to us about, for the church planter, the pastor, the leader watching this, why does intergenerational ministry matter so much? And then is there a specific thing we can do to strengthen that in our local church?
Yeah, I mean, for me in my life, growing up at Cedar Valley Church under Jerry Strangquist's leadership, he was my pastor 26 years of my life. And having an intergenerational relationship with him, he's now retired, moved to Arizona. And 3 of us guys, we go to visit him every year. And having him and other intergenerational relationships, like it's made the world of difference in my own life to have somebody believe in me and care for me and to open doors for me as a sponsor and just to call out the call of God and to encourage me. And I think that what breaks my heart is to know that 2/3 of young adults haven't had that person who cares for them or believes in them. 66% would say, man, I don't know an adult who cares for me or believes in me. And so that breaks my heart. I think that validates the call to reach the next generation. And even in scripture, we see that one generation is to tell the next of the marvelous deeds of God. And so this thing called faith and church and community, it's intergenerational from its design. And I mean, Micah, you even said recently that there's a question that this generation has.
Yeah, I guess we were at a breakout session, or like 100 leaders in our local area were together, and one girl gets up on the microphone. They kind of did open mic Q&A, and she's like, how do I find a mentor? And she has 4 kids. She's married, has a big house. Like, she's being very successful, what the world standards would be. But she's like, I don't know what to look for in a mentor. I don't know how to find one. And I don't know how to ask. So I think what we are realizing just doing young adult ministry and at large is we're trying to parent a fatherless generation, right? That's what it once was. And now we're even seeing statistics that we are truly trying to parent orphans, right? Not even outside of God's kingdom necessarily, but young adults who have been raising their own siblings, who are trying to raise themselves, trying to figure out life. So I think when we talk about mentorship, discipleship, relationships, friendships, those are all 4 things and key things that Josiah has written about in the past, but also what young adults are craving and starving for. And when you have the intergenerational aspect of things, there's wisdom imparted, there's knowledge, there's people that are 2, 3, 4 generations ahead of us on some levels of like, wow, I'm going to find the old woman in the corner who's always has her head down, not sleeping, praying in the spirit for everything. And she's 90 years old. Like I need and want to learn from her. And when we link arms with the generations, like who is mentoring me, number one, and I want to link arms with them, and who am I mentoring? And you kind of just link arms with those generations to know and to impart that wisdom, that knowledge, that truth, like discernment, like all those different elements and aspects is, I think, essential in this day and age. And biblically speaking, like Josiah already touched, like it's there, it's evident. And when we have people who see us, know us, and believe in us, we feel supported as people, and we just can, go to next heights and depths, not only with them, but with the Lord, if we have those people speaking into our aspects of our life. So
good. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add this, like the vantage point that I see is I see young adults as very, like Micah said, the question of a generation is, where's the mentor? Who should I ask to be my mentor? I know I need to find one, but then they're really confused when they ask someone who self-selects out and says, I'm not qualified to be a mentor. And so I think that's some of the generational gap that I see right now is like, listen, you're qualified.
They have something to offer.
You have something to offer. And I think that that's just something that we need to help maybe raise the bar of involvement, but lower the level of fear in the process.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit like parenting. We think, well, I got to be a perfect parent. There's no perfect parent, right? And you learn as you go. I can't invest in someone until I have extra money. Well, if generosity doesn't already mark you, you will never have that extra resources, right? So I agree. It's a mentality and a lens that we look through. So one of the language or phrases we often use is, we want more for you than from you. And that's what I'm hearing from you guys. When you think about a church plan or an existing church, often the question is, how do we reach young adults? But maybe the question, rather than how can I get them to come to us, how can we go to them, right? And what I'm hearing is you're saying, everyone wants a mentor. Everyone wants someone to see something and say something in them, to speak that life over them, right? So help us practically. What's the next best step for someone listening? And they would say, we have a gap of young adults, whether it's a church plant or a existing church. How can pastors connect and reach out, not necessarily so that they come to church, but so that they get in this journey of faith?
Yeah. I think one thing to recognize as a lead pastor, like what is emulated from the stage becomes a core value to the rest of the congregation. Oh. And if it doesn't resonate with the heart of the person, they might not attend, they might kind of slip out the back door, like whatever that is or looks like. But I just remember being under an amazing pastor, Pastor Doug Graham, and he had saw a need that was just exploding in our church. And at that time, it was like the children's side of things, like birth through 5. And from the stage, he had just strictly said like, hey, you guys, we're going to start something new in this church, and it's going to be attend one, serve one. So we have 2 services, one you attend and one you serve. To, like our hands and our hearts should desire to serve the local church as well as God and his people, right? So when he started saying like, hey, we need people in the daycare side of things or the nursery side of things, he said, hey, if you are passionate about X, Y, and Z, we want you to get involved. So as he was casting vision and just the verbiage he was using, his heart stayed the same. Like, hey, the need stayed the same, but the approach of how to deliver that message and the importance of what people could do. You get to pray over these babies. You get to bless the mom and dad who gets to sit through a service and just receive, right? So I think with young adult ministry has to come from the stage first and foremost, but then it's equipping your leaders, your volunteers. And one way that we've seen the connection, maybe not getting them through the doors, bless you, was more or less like starting small groups, a personal invitation. Instead of saying, hey, I'll meet you at church, it's, hey, come sit with me. So when we invite them to our personal circle of friends and not just the pew or the seat next to us, and extend that outside of those walls of saying, hey, want to come over to my house for supper? Want to come over to our house for lunch? Hey, we have the boat out. Hey, we have... I don't know, it's inviting people in not only to your church day, but like your personal life. And that's where we've seen a lot of significant growth and change within, I guess, the question that you're asking. I just thought you might have some ideas as well.
There's a great church planter in our state, in our area, who's really inspired me. By the way, he lives this out, and his name's Doug Vogley at the Waters Church. And he has had over 3,000 people visit his home for a meal. And so I think of just the opportunity that maybe a pastor is like, well, I can't do it every day or every night of the week or every week. There's demands on your life and family. But once a month, he has any young adult or any new visitor to the church over to his home. And so I think of like, that's a really low pressure invite. Do you want to come have dinner? And I think another thing that Chi Alpha Ministry really taught us, I worked at a church for 6-7 years. And honestly, it was more of a established church. Had probably a 60-year history, but kind of the the mindset that we had was like, come to us. And then we launch in a campus ministry and you're like, oh, nobody's coming to us. Like we literally have to go to them.
Yeah.
If we don't want to just sit by ourselves, we've literally got to change and go to campus and be in the halls, be in the classrooms, have meals, like work out at the gym. And that's what I love about the church planter lifestyle, is there might not be as much of a established building or office structure, and your office might be a coffee shop, and it lends itself actually really well to relationship building. And I think that we talked about young adults are looking for those friends, those mentors. And so I think that just looking at, does somebody look young? Like, do you have any young adults in your contact list that you could text, that you could pray for, that you could go to the places that maybe they're frequenting? I think that's where it starts, is shifting that mindset of, instead of just coming to us, we're going to go to you.
Yeah, that's great. Two other things to echo you guys that I've seen effective especially in church plants is when a young adult is, as you said, Micah, on the platform, they don't have to be the primary communicator or the lead pastor, but whether they call it announcements or highlights, or we're going to draw attention to, whether it's video or live, there's the power of partnership. And when someone on the platform looks like them-ish, right? It feels like I fit here, I belong here, right? So I think intentionally asking, do we have multiple generations on the platform, right?
That's so
and
good.
then not at church, as we talked about, of creating opportunities for multiple generations to gather and just talk life. I know Joanna and I've had young adults in our home for years, and we do read the Bible. We do read through the New Testament, but it's not just that. Sometimes it's just, hey, how did you deal with conflict? What'd you do when you weren't sure you want to stay married? And how did you fight through the emotions? What about after your first child? There's just life stuff, right? And so sometimes you see the gospel before you hear it, and you get a chance to observe it in action. And I think it's just creating an environment in our churches where people know that they are valued, that they're loved, and that there's a spot for them. And I know that that sounds really easy, but sometimes that's challenging. So I'm going to give you this. I want to give you each get 2 words. And if you could describe, again, you just each get 2 words now. Okay. What is a young adult expecting or hoping to experience at the church? Not necessarily a specific, but just in general. So you each get, what do they need? What does a pastor have to facilitate and foster to engage young adults? So each get two words.
You want to go first? You go
Sure.
first. I will not copy yours.
Okay. I would say the first word is wanted, welcome.
Yeah.
And man, from a business that does this one really well is Buckle.
Okay.
If you shop at the Buckle, we had this thing where it was called the Buckle Challenge. Like, if you can make it in and out without somebody saying hi and greeting, we're glad you're here, how can we help you? That was the Buckle Challenge, because they always greet you. It's almost like they're on mission. So that's word number 1 is you're welcome here, you're wanted. The second is really curious. I've said it this way before, Jeffrey, that young adults are asking questions that we the church aren't answering.
Right.
And then a lot of times, I'm guilty of this. I know I'm answering questions sometimes, or we're answering questions that nobody's asking.
They're not asking.
So I'd say, but curious, but also they have questions. They want to be wanted.
Yeah.
Okay. My 2 words are they want community and truth. The word of God, truth. They don't want the fluff.
Yep.
Community, truth. I'll make short. That's my 2.
That's great. Now, here's the thing about all 4 of those words. You get those in the gospel. You can't read the gospels and not see all 4 of those exhibited, right? So, okay, what do they not want? So you each get two words again. What pushes them away? What makes them go, I'm opting out, whether they grew up in church or they just visited?
Yeah.
You go.
I mean, I'll start again. The first one
2
is
words.
Judgment. And I won't say anything else. I'll just say judgment. And then
what about to the pastor that says we're supposed to judge?
Those inside the faith.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's good. Okay.
So but I'd say judgment. And then the second word that they're not looking for, that just kind of really repels anyone, really, not even just limited to young adults, but I'd say along with judgment would just be insincere. Like something fake or too overproduced. Like they just want the real.
Yep. Good.
And I would say hype, because they are hungry. They don't want the hype. They just want the hype is one. And I'd say the fluff. I kind of already alluded to that. They don't want fluff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because every generation has expressions or preferences, right? And I think it's so helpful. You guys are helping us to think through, and we always want to go from the lens of what are we for rather than what we're against. But it's good for people to hear you guys say a young adult does not look to be impressed. They want authentic, right? Mm-hmm. They don't want to be judged. So because they're curious, they want an environment where they can process, they can wrestle through. And a good friend of ours, Preston Ulmer, has doubters clubs that creates those environments. But you don't have to start a doubters club to have a small group of people that connect in community, right, Micah, where they're getting truth. So, okay, 2 more questions, and then we're going to get to the lightning round, which is our goal. Okay,
it is our goal.
So many of the churches we plant have a strong young adult presence, but they are looking for the other generation. How can young adults who are listening to this, how can you connect and make room for people who are not the cool 22-year-old, hip in style? How can a young adult intentionally engage other generations?
Ooh, I would say start praying about a mentor and discipleship, in a sense of what do you see in somebody else generations above you who is doing what you want to be doing, whether it's a successful marriage, raising Christian children, maybe loving your singleness. So start praying and have God illuminate those people to you, and don't be afraid to approach them. And it's not like you're asking them to marry you. You're saying, hey, I'd love to get a cup of coffee and hear more about your story. So just being a young adult who can ask good questions to the generations above. And not that I'm judging the generations. And a practical thing that we did to help bridge this gap is actually called Bridging the Gap. We did this fun supper where it's like these elders of the church, the young adults, our ministry came in, and it was about 70 of us who prepared a supper and sat at the table. So we had questions in bowls for the generation. So only 2 young adults per table, and 8 elders of the church would sit at each table, and we would engage in conversation for that 2 or 3 hour span. We made mashed potatoes and meatballs. So we did everything literally by hand, and they were impressed, for number 1. 2, it opened up the doors of conversation. And 3, we piggybacked that meal off of testimonies, because we went to Alaska for a mission trip. So they said, we want to hear about the mission trip that these 70 young adults went on, and we want to know what God is doing and what he's done. And to sit at the table of gray-haired people who were in tears, I want to cry now, but saying like, hey, I was 25 at the time, or 27. And there's like, hey, we've been praying for opportunities like this for 30 years, every single day. We've come into this church to pray every single day. And so in my mind, holy cow, you were praying for me and the mission that God has me on, as well as everybody else in this room, for longer than I've been alive. So just to hear the heart of the generations who have gone before us, who, whether we want to admit it or not, they're pioneering things, and they are praying prayers that are going to outlive their life.
Yes.
So I think it's like that tension to recognize, like, hey, young person, don't think that the older generation is incompetent, unwilling to learn, stubborn, and just insincere. Those are false things. Just because you have maybe one encounter with that does not mean every person older than you is thinking that, right? Yeah. So just even sharing like, hey, they have wisdom to impart. They've made mistakes that maybe can prevent you from walking down this road. So creating literal opportunities of community around tables and hearing the heart of the elders will bring tears to your eyes if you're truly like listening to the words. Like, whoa, 30 years you've been praying, and I'm only 27. Right. So sorry, that was a long answer. Lightning round almost. Sorry.
No. Josiah, real quick, before you jump in, I want to hit a few things here. So Micah, I think it's powerful that you're asking young adults to initiate, not just wait to be pursued.
100%.
Right. And I think sometimes the question we ask in church is, how can we keep or get young adults? But for every young adult that's in the church, they need to ask the question, how am I engaging with multiple generations? Because when you do that healthy, people that are your peers want that. They're craving for that, right? Mm-hmm. And then I think one other thought on what you said is so powerful, that sometimes if you listen to someone else's story, eventually they'll want to hear yours.
Right.
So I think young adults can sometimes have this sense of, hey, do I like you? And the older generation is asking, do you like me? Right. Mm-hmm. And if we could just take the approach of we all need each other. There's power in partnership. There's, like you said, one generation commend your works to the next. That's just incredible. So Josiah, you're up.
Oh, Micah, what you said was so amazing. I just was going to say this. We, in the past few years, have been going to a different church than when we were on staff. And so we found a new church, and it's filled with young people. And also, like in my life, we've done a lot of ministry with young people. So when I walk into church, what I literally see is what you're saying. Like, one of the things that I'm praying about is like, man, how do we find the older generation? Because I'm used to it. That's the church that I grew up at. It was like that. It was intergenerational. And so I made my first friend at our church, and he's 61.
Yep.
And it's taken a couple years to build that friendship or foster that friendship. But I think just being intentional was all I was going to add.
Oh, wow. So I pulled a Josiah one a little longer. Sorry.
It was gold. It was gold.
So Josiah, I love that insight, because we can't force friendship. We can't force relationship, but in the local church, we can foster environments where that happens. And you both nailed that. Okay. Last question is really, what do you want to say representing founders of young adult ministry on the cutting edge of serving young adults across the nation? What do you want to say to pastors who are church planting or leading existing churches?
Do you want to go?
Take it away.
Oh man, I would say to the lead pastor, don't be afraid of the next generation, and don't let your ego get in the way of handing off the baton to people who are still like, they're behind you. Like, you're blazing a trail, but they're hot on your trail at the same time. So I would just be really praying and encouraging you to call out the greatness of the next generation, even when it doesn't make sense, even when you don't understand, even if you don't know you're making a difference, because you are. I would just encourage the lead pastor to invite young adults into the equation. Ask them questions. What do they want to hear? What is God teaching them? What does the lead pastor need to know? Like, even have a brainstorming session around the table with 10, 20 young adults who can just spew ideas, and nothing has to stick really, but it has to bring forth the awareness that we've studied a generation so much that we begin to overlook them, and we haven't been in community and communication with them. So our prayer is that the lead pastor would be secure enough in their own leadership and the call of God on them that they be willing to have those people underneath them at some point and pass the baton, and not hold on longer than what they need to, but trusting that God is bringing the people who can hold up their arms, that can take over some things somewhere down the line. So maybe that was too straightforward, but
that's good. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, one thing that we've seen is a lot of lead pastors who are scared of the next generation, and their threat. I don't know if it's a threat. I don't know if it's an insecurity of leadership or whatever it is. And those are human things, and those are fine. But if we can really address that and be like, wow, even me, Micah, what am I insecure of? Like, I don't have all the answers, but I want to discover some of that with the young people who are asking them. So
great. We regularly say that you don't lose influence by sharing it. You actually gain more.
Wow.
We think, hey, if someone else has a voice or the mic or a platform, no, you get to leverage your platform, like you're saying, to create space for other people. And now you don't lose influence, you actually broaden it. So that's powerful. All right, Josiah, closing thought before we get to lightning round.
Oh my gosh, thanks for the opportunity. Jeffrey, my heart breaks for young adults. And I just think that their rally cry is, what about us? I think they're actually trying out church. I think they're kind of giving us a test. They're giving us a chance. And I'm just like, we gotta do something. And so what can we do together? Because no one ministry or person or church or church plant or network or denomination can reach everyone. Like it takes the body of Christ. And I think this is an all hands on deck call because we believe the faith of the next generation is worth everything. And so I think that history outlines it, right? The wave always starts in the football game in the student section. So history declares of these great awakenings and these mighty revivals that swept across America and across the globe. And I think our world today is desperate for it.
Right.
The future depends on it, the faith of the next generation. And so how can we just take time in our office today on our commute home to maybe text a young adult and say, hey, I love you, I'm praying for you, and I believe in you? How can we just invite somebody into our office or visit them at the Buckle where they're working or integrate young adults into our life? Like the next step might be a full-blown young adult ministry, but the next step might just be pastoring a young adult and praying for a young adult and believing in a young adult and open up the door for a young adult. Like we never know the difference that that's going to make, but I think that that's stewardship.
Yeah.
I think that's leadership, and I think that's faithfulness.
Yeah.
So good. I got 2 closing thoughts and we'll get to lightning round. People would often ask us when we launched our church, hey, do you have a young adult youth ministry? Do you have a youth ministry? And I know they're not the same, but that question would get asked. And our answer was always yes. We didn't have full everything, but what we did was we created natural connection points through our small groups until the ministry grew, where now you launch these ministries. And so to every church planter watching, or maybe established church, and you're saying, hey, we don't see anyone of that generation that's connected with us. Well, you've got to make sure that they know there's opportunities for them and that there's an outlet for them. And the second thing is you never go wrong getting people into the scriptures. When we read through the Bible, when we read through, the book of Acts, the launch of the church, when you think about the disciples, these were a ton of young men and women who turned the world upside down because they got invited to join Jesus on his mission. So let's keep fighting for this generation and the next and the next and the next. Okay, lightning round. Okay, got 3 or 4 questions depending on how long your answers are. First question is this: if there was one restaurant you could eliminate, you could zap it off the face of the earth, what are you eliminating?
McDonald's, because our daughter loves their French fries and wants them every day.
Okay.
Answer. Donald fries.
That's hilarious. Well, I'm getting rid of one restaurant.
Yeah.
You need a shot clock.
Oh my gosh. Help me out. What do I not like?
3, 2.
I'll echo Mickey D's. No,
Okay.
health food only.
Okay. Beach or mountains for vacation?
Beach every time.
Beach. Okay. Favorite movie you've seen recently?
Ooh, Maverick. Sorry. That's
Yeah,
the best
that
one
was
I've
so
seen
good. It
lately.
went to my top 5 immediately. I loved it.
Of all time?
Top 5. I have it vacillates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, mine's in my top 10, so that's good.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if I top 5. That's a good question, but I'm asking the question. So
That's
it's good. Just playing with you. So if you can say one thing, it doesn't have to be one word, but one thing to your 20-year-old self, what would you say?
Stay connected to the heart of Christ and get plugged into community in the process.
Okay. Heart of Christ, community.
Yep.
Yeah. Mine, I felt in my spirit a drive, an ambition, and the world was telling me, like, hurry up, you're falling behind at 20, right? Like, what a lie. And I think that as I started to hear the voice of God, it was whispering, hold up. And so I think, like, go after the dreams, but just take one step at a time. You like, there's tomorrow too. That's what I would tell as an overachiever, as somebody who's dealt with tension headaches, as somebody who's, had unhealthy tendencies. I would just say, like, hold up, there's tomorrow too.
That's good. Okay. Last question. When you think about your future 5 years from now, what's one thing you want to have accomplished? On the heels of that question.
Personally or ministry wise?
You can choose. Let me rephrase it.
Yeah.
What's one thing on your bucket list you hope to check off between now and 5 years?
Okay, that just changed instantly for me. Okay. I was gonna say the 10,000 vision that I shared at the top of the episode, that dorm dream. Like, Jeffrey, that's what I pray for. That's what I fast for and believe for young adults. Bucket list, I want to go to Dubai.
Ooh.
Okay. Nice. I love it.
Oh man, I love renovating and making things. I would love to have a seasonal, I don't know what you want to call it, workshop, and just do like a big Christmas sale. Like I love to work with my hands.
Okay.
So if I'm refurbishing furniture and everything, I told Josiah, I was like, I would love to do like a full-fledged seasonal rummage sale specifically for Christmas and serve cider and cookies and stuff like that. I don't know why.
Sounds like a Hallmark movie.
I'm a Hallmark nerd. So maybe they'll take this idea if they're listening.
I would say this. I accidentally watched the Hallmark this last Christmas. I didn't plan to. I was doing the dishes. My wife was watching it. I got sucked in and I had to figure out. And of course, the answer was yes, they got together. So on that note, I love it. Okay. Hey, listen, for those in our audience that maybe they want you to come in and speak. They want to have you consult with them for young adults, or what's ways they can connect? What are resources? What's the best way for them to leverage the gift you are to the kingdom of God?
I would say number one, you can check out the website where all of this stuff will be, and it's youngadults.today. So youngadults.today. There you will find a podcast. There you'll find a couple books that we've written with about 23 to 26 other authors throughout the U.S.
Great.
What else, Josiah? You want to go?
Man, I'd say if you do visit youngadults.today, there's a speaking forum. That's where we book all of travel and communication stuff. There's also a brand new ebook that we finished it yesterday. So we'd have.
All right.
But it's basically 10 steps to starting a young adult ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
And it's free download for CMN listeners. Anyone who visits the website, it'll be up in time so that you can just have access to it. And it's a free resource to the kingdom of God. And I just say, like, Jeffrey, you're a beast. You're awesome. We love church planting, the CMN network. Thanks for having us on.
Love it. Youngadult.today. Check it out. Thanks for your investment in the kingdom. CMN, friends and family, let's keep growing together. We'll see you soon.